Yeah, smoke pot for freedom.
Right on.
Welcome to the Party Down TV. Today's topic is, what is the Quad Cities Hemp Coalition? My name is Jim Getman. With me is Chris Rice. He's been a supporter of the Quad Cities Hemp Coalition for a number of years. How you doing, Chris?
Fine.
Glad to have you here with me today. Tell me about the Quad Cities Hemp Coalition. What is the organization?
Well, the Quad City Hemp Coalition is a group of individuals that's dedicated to the legalization of the hemp plant for food, fuel, fiber, medicinal uses, and recreational uses too.
Great. Well, why do we have to re-legalize hemp? I mean, people used to believe that hemp was legal before, but maybe they don't understand that it's illegal now.
Well, in the 30s, the government instituted a tax law on hemp, and basically the reason for the tax law was to deny licenses. It was to license people, and then they denied people licenses to grow hemp, and eventually it became illegal on a federal level.
Okay. Well, once the feds have made it illegal, then many states went on with their own laws to make it illegal. But I guess from my understanding of the hemp issue, it goes back to the days of DuPont Corporation having government licenses, and they wanted to sell their synthetic products, so they made the natural fiber hemp illegal, and through taxation, by taxing it out of the market, so they can have a monopoly on fibers.
Yeah, there is evidence that right as a hemp decorticator was developed in 1937, it was immediately after that it was lobbied to be illegal. And I don't think it was a coincidence that it happened at the same time, considering that hemp, the fibers from the hemp plant are the only thing that can really compete with synthetic fibers in durability, strength, and wear and tear, how much it can take.
Okay, that sounds great. But the organization now of the Quad Cities Hemp Coalition, what does that consist of? I mean, do you have lots of people, or are there just some base members that drive the organization?
Well, there's a few main individuals that basically steer most of the activities. We pretty much have been promoting hemp festivals in order to educate more people and to also show the authorities that there is support for what we believe.
Okay. When did you start this organization?
Well, it started in basically we planned a protest at the courthouse in Scott County, and it was October of '90, and it was immediately following a serious drought for recreational hemp, and the drought was it was amazing. I mean, everywhere you went, every gas station, total strangers would come up to you and ask you for it because nobody could find it, and I've never seen anything like it in my life. So we held this protest at the Scott County Courthouse, and basically we went from there and promoted another one at the Rock Island County Courthouse the following spring, and since then we've taken it to like the parks to where we could have live music and more relaxed environment, so people feel more comfortable about attending and learning about the hemp plant and hopefully making a statement.
Great. I remember that first festival that they had at the Scott County Courthouse. They had some traveling people that came in from out of town. Let's see, was it
the hemp tour, Cannabis Action Network? Yes, they came in. There was a couple speakers from there.
And then let's see, they had tables set up with literature and. I don't think the vending, with buying T-shirts and things, that really kind of started more with the later hemp festivals that we've had.
Well, you know, it comes with the territory, and it promotes the idea of the plant, and anything that promotes the idea of the hemp plant, then I'm all for it.
Great. And let's see, we had the first festival, you just said, was at the Scott County Courthouse, and then we had one in Rock Island at the Rock Island Courthouse, and had several in Bettendorf. One of the first festivals we had there in Bettendorf, we had some kind of famous people come. Mr. Jack Hara.
Yeah, Jack Herrera. He wrote the book "The Emperor Wears No Clothes," documenting the hemp plant and why it was made illegal and the actual uses of it. And there was a lot of government documents reprinted in that book, particularly like Hemp Bulletin number 404. Which was a Department of Agriculture publication outlining why hemp is a better source of fiber for making paper than trees. And this was written in 1913. Well, at the time it wasn't necessarily economically feasible because of the machinery to process the hemp plant hadn't been invented yet. The cotton gin of the hemp plant, so to speak. And when that was invented in 37, you know, it was right after that they made it illegal, so it was never able to be used in that manner.
I remember when Jack came to that Bettendorf festival, they had the TV crew from California called Time for Hemp. Time for Hemp series that's being showed on the cable access around here, if some of you people have seen it before. Casper Leach is the host of that show. And he came to that festival, so that was kind of fun. And we've had another festival in Bettendorf. I think it was like a year or so later. It went over pretty good.
Yeah, we had two in Rock Island and had one in Moline too.
Yeah, that was the last one we had. Was the one in Moline.
Moline was interesting.
Now the police presence is not.
We met some resistance from the authorities
in the Moline one, the most recent one. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the other park festivals have been pretty laid back. What would be the attendance? Was it like 500 to 1,000 people or something like that?
Yeah, over the course of the day, I'd say at least 1,500 people, but probably no more than 1,000 at any given time.
So as we keep having more and more of these festivals, the organization seems to be drawing more and more people into the awareness of the hemp issue,
there's been a lot of fear on a lot of people's behalf of it is an illegal plant, and to go to the park and make the statement is basically people believe that it makes them susceptible to arrest. I've never really heard of anybody being arrested as a result of their attendance at a hemp fest, but there's it's understandable that people would be afraid because of the what they've seen happen to their friends and relatives who just use the plant without even coming out and saying that they believed in it.
We've been very fortunate with the festivals that we've had that they haven't really been a lot of police presence. I mean, the amount of police presence there is just general maintenance of it, keeping everybody as far as trouble goes. But fortunately, we've had nobody actually harassed for consuming the hemp.
Well, until Moline.
Right. It was a
Moline.
man
That
in
was the
Moline
first time that happened.
I guess he was never charged or anything.
He was never charged, but somebody had a marijuana pipe, and they were grabbed by the police and later released without being issued a ticket or anything.
Now, if I recall from that festival, those chanting by the attendees of the festival, I mean, there's
Well,
several hundred people were chanting at the police not to do anything to
You
this
can't expect a
individual, you know.
culture that believes in the use of the plant to stand and watch one of the members of their culture be oppressed for using the plant and not to stand up in behalf of the individual. It's as American as apple pie. You know, the Declaration of Independence said that we have a God-given, inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And in my opinion, smoking a joint is one of the best ways to pursue happiness.
No, I'd agree with that. It's considerably safer than consumption of alcohol. And,
Oh,
I mean,
definitely. That they've never been able to prove that anyone died ever from cannabis, but they've documented hundreds of thousands of deaths every year to alcohol and tobacco, two legal substances. And I myself just recently, 3 weeks ago, gave up my addiction to tobacco, and I'm really relieved.
Congratulations, that's great. I think they estimate that 500,000 people a year, you know, succumb to diseases as a result of tobacco usage, and about 50,000 a year die from alcohol, you know, related diseases, and other illegal drugs such as cocaine and heroin. Maybe possibility to 5,000 to 10,000 people succumb to those, you know, have death due to consumption of those
Well,
drugs.
actually, I did a research paper in college, and it was for sociology class, and I was doing a research paper on a study by Arnold Trebach, the president of the Drug Policy Foundation, and it was like there's less than 5,000 deaths attributed to all illegal drugs in a year, you know, and that in the same research paper it was showing that there's like 6,000 deaths due to home swimming pool accidents every year. But you don't see people trying to make home swimming pools as a form of recreation illegal.
Well, it's just like automobiles, you know, and they claim 50,000 people a year, but of course they're not going to outlaw driving.
But that's all illegal drugs, cocaine, heroin, all that, and I personally don't care for any of them.
But with
they haven't been able to attribute any to cannabis itself.
Yeah, with the cannabis hemp, virtually none. You know, now like any situations, there's always a possibility of an accident occurring while under the influence, but I imagine there's probably more accidents occur from people consuming cold medicines or just having a bad day where they're not paying attention to what they're doing, you know.
Well, I actually know people that drink cold medicine to achieve a altered state of consciousness too. So,
well, it just shows you that just throughout history, mankind has they've always seeked an altered state of consciousness. I mean, there's always been alcohol's been around forever, and cannabis has been around forever. You know, the Chinese, I guess, 5,000 years ago.
They do it religiously and ceremonially too. Lots of it's part of the Hindu culture and just as much of their religion. And Hindu, Muslims, Buddhists, Rastafarians, all kinds of them, they use it religiously. You know, it's part of their religion, and we're supposed to be guaranteed the right to exercise our religion as we believe in this country. And but that's not respected in respect to the use of the cannabis plant religiously, and a lot of people do use it for that purpose, and they're denied that right.
Yeah, I don't know exactly why they don't want people to obtain happiness. I mean, it's like there's this oppressive authority that says we want you to work and pay your taxes, but we don't want you to have any fun, you know.
Well,
and it's just not right.
Somebody who's content doesn't make a very good customer, because if they're content, they're not wanting to buy something else, you know, and maybe it has something to do with that. I don't know.
Well, it's like this instability and the high crime that we're having now, which is based mostly the result of the crack cocaine epidemic, you know, so to speak. The fact that the crack cocaine is illegal and people have to do what they have to do in the black market to protect their market interests, and there's always the rip-off and the crime that's associated with just black market activity.
Well, of course, the the way the laws are concerning drugs now, in general, basically it hasn't stopped anybody from doing it. People still do it. It stops people from being able to do it religiously and ceremonially that would use it for those purposes. They are unable to use it in those means, and it is a breeding ground for criminal activity. You know, and if breaking the marijuana law makes me an outlaw, which in turn makes me a criminal in society's eyes. It's just a breeding ground for violence and stuff. You cannot go to the police when you get ripped off. You cannot sue somebody when somebody steals your stash. You know, and
yeah, there's no consumer protection agency like
you have no alternative.
Stuff,
you can either just let it ride or
and then that breeds
commit an act of violence.
That breeds the contempt and the violence, which prohibition, which history. They already know all this from back in the 30s during alcohol prohibition, how all the violence erupted out of the fact that the alcohol was illegal. Now the same thing is happening today with the more modern drugs, the cannabis and the crack cocaine. But
well, they're really lucky with the cannabis because cannabis in itself has the ability to make somebody more calm, to where they're less likely to be provoked to violence, and so there's not as much violence associated with cannabis distribution, black market, as say with alcohol or
that's a big problem. I think a lot of there's a misconception among the public as to the difference between cannabis and cocaine and alcohol. That cocaine and alcohol, they have a tendency to get you all hyped up and excited and everything. Yeah. And the cannabis is more or less laid back. You're just relaxed, you're comfortable, and you don't want to hurt people. Which is we have to break this this idea that cannabis and all these other drugs are all grouped together and cause similar behaviors. And it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but that's what they do. They keep arguing that well, cannabis leads to other drugs. Well, they say, well, I started smoking cannabis. But if you were asked those people who probably were smoking cannabis before they moved on to other drugs, well, they probably drank beer, which was legal, and they probably smoked cigarettes.
I was doing a white powder long before I ever smoked cannabis that gives you a burst of energy and then leaves you kind of hanging, and I'd feel tired afterwards. It would affect my appetite and stuff. Sugar, I was doing that at a very young age, and if anything, that probably had more to do with it than anything.
The caffeine, there's about the Pepsi generation. You're getting your dose of caffeine.
Another nice white powder.
Yeah, it's interesting. You participate in the 12-step programs, and okay, you're abstaining from alcohol and drugs usage, but you're consuming tobacco and caffeine in massive quantities. So that's part of the hypocrisy that we're fighting. But back to the Quad City Hemp Coalition, though, we've, in addition to the outdoor festivals that they've had in the let's see, they usually have them in May and September, October, something about that neighborhood. Okay, well, in addition to those, they've also had indoor festivals in the wintertime, right?
Can
you tell me about
we've
those?
had two of them. Well, they were just basically fundraisers. We'd have 4 bands.
Thank y'all. Lots of bands coming down the line at you here in just a little bit. My name is Mark Arnold. This was Rich Wilcox on violin. Make some noise.
If you haven't been in the adjacent room, the blue room, we've got a lot of good information over there. There's copies of letters to send to President-elect Clinton and Vice President-elect Al Gore that will hopefully promote the relegalization of hemp. Also, you Illinois residents, please contact Carol Mosley Braun. One of her campaign pledges was to decriminalize marijuana. So we've got somebody in the Senate that's thinking along the lines that we all are. So let Carol Mosley Braun know. Also, if you're 18 years or older and you have not registered to vote, please register to vote. If you're an Illinois resident, there's plenty of Illinois registrars here tonight. We can get you registered. We've also got the forms to register for Iowa residents. Please register to vote. It's very important that you do this. Not only does it give you the opportunity to vote, but it also makes your signature valid if you vote. If you're not registered to vote, you don't count. Also, if you're registered to vote, you're more likely to get picked for jury duty. Don't shun jury duty. You have the right to decide whether a law is a good law or a bad law. This is a right that is recognized by our founders. It's in the Constitution. That's what the 6th and 7th Amendments are telling us. So please don't ignore. I'd also like to thank KWQC TV Channel 6 for showing up here and doing a couple news spots. I don't know, maybe I'll get in trouble again, but believe me, it's worth it. It really is worth it. And I hope the powers that be realize that we ain't going away. We're just getting bigger and stronger every day.
Generally do cost a lot of money. You usually have to have a lot of liability insurance, and you have to give money to the park and the city, and a lot of times for police protection.
That's right. The police that are there are actually hired by the festival. Just
well, in Moline they weren't.
Mm-hmm.
They
voluntarily came.
Well, they were assigned that duty by the police chief or the captain or whoever, because they didn't want to be paid by us. But we have to pay them to protect the park because there's going to be live music and stuff, and
there are lots of people around. You're always going to have
the potential for you know, where you would need police presence.
Sure. I mean, I don't know really what concerns we had at any of the festivals in the past. I don't really remember any trouble. I mean, illegal parking. I mean, they wrote a lot of tickets maybe for illegal parking.
Well, that's just because there's so many people and it's hard to find a place big enough. So that was the biggest complaint in Moline, that there was just too many people. So it's a popular idea.
Well, it's really great though, because these festivals, the hemp festival idea is occurring all over the country, isn't it?
Yeah, there's probably several hundred every year. They've been occurring in almost every city. In Iowa, they've happened in Ames, Grinnell, Des Moines, Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, Davenport, Bettendorf, probably even Sioux City, I believe.
And the size of the festivals kind of vary depending on the metropolitan area that they're in. But,
yeah.
But in Atlanta, they had the Black Crows.
I believe they had like 50,000 people
50,000,
there.
Yeah. And the one
they had one in Seattle recently that had somewhere approaching that, because they had a lot of the local Seattle bands supported it.
Mm-hmm. And they always have the Madison and the Midwest Harvest Festival up in Madison.
Yeah, they get about 35,000 people at the Marijuana Harvest Fest in Madison every year.
So there are a lot of people that are coming out of the closet, so to speak, and attending these festivals, which is great. And in addition to that, there's usually lots of local media coverage at the festivals, right?
Really, that's probably one of the best benefits, is the media coverage, because if we were to spend spend direct money on the media coverage that we have, we wouldn't get any more coverage than what we do from throwing a big fest. And being able to have that direct contact with the people where they're there, and and feeling the vibe totally, and the the media coverage is basically would cost us that much is what it costs to put on a hemp fest anyway.
Well, I think probably one thing the media, if they hear there's civil disobedience going on, they consider it a news story and they want to cover it, which it's been pretty good in the past. Whenever one of these events occur, that the news media does cover it, because it's like didn't they make that kind of lead story on several of their news broadcasts? Huh?
I wouldn't mind committing some civil disobedience on your show, but I understand that it's illegal to do it on on. They had some law where you can't show commission of an illegal act on TV or whatever, something like that.
Yeah, I suppose maybe the news people can get away with it if they consider it live, unplanned footage,
Oh well.
But civil disobedience, that's a fundamental concept of democracy. I mean, it goes all the way back to the Boston Tea Party. I mean,
right on. every time I fire one up, I think of it's a mini little Boston Tea Party.
And I know they've had a number of major acts of civil disobedience where individuals will go up to the steps of the U.S. Capitol or the state capitol, and they'll light up and demand that the law be enforced. And,
right on.
And sometimes they're arrested, and other times they're not. And there's an individual here.
They don't have the jail space. I mean, there's at least 10,000 cannabis users in the Quad Cities, and at least, and
that's
they don't
very
have the jail
conservative
space,
estimate, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, their jails are, I don't know how many they hold, but they're always at capacity anyway. So they don't have the jail space. Since I can't smoke on your show, would you mind if I showed some hemp?
Oh, that'd be a good idea. Yeah, let's see what you have here.
These just happen to be like products that I bought at a local. This was at a pet store in Rock Island. It's canary song treat. It's a bird food.
Can I see what that looks like here? Yeah. Okay, it says canary treat, song treat. Okay, and then is that it's rumored that birds sing well.
Yeah.
With
When they made hemp illegal, they left a loophole in the law to where hemp seed could still be imported because the bird seed manufacturers they said certain birds would not sing without it, and so today even in the 90s you can buy bird food with hemp seed in it. It says hemp seed right on the can. Is one of the constituents.
Yeah, great.
You can buy
so it's $1.99. Yeah. So 7 ounces. Yeah, I tell somebody I bought 7 ounces of hemp for $1.99. They go, "Where'd you get it?" Yeah. Okay, what else do you have here?
This is interesting. It's some tea that I bought at a local health food store, and the interesting thing about it is that they thought it was important to mention that their tea bag was made of natural hemp fiber. So I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, because I mean the hemp fiber is considerably stronger than your wood or tree type fibers, and I'm not exactly sure why that is. I think they say the way the plant grows, so the fibers are more continuous in length. So you can get real long, continuous growths of fibers.
Well, yeah, they'll grow 3 to 4 foot long, and cotton is maybe an inch. The fiber, and it just stands to reason. And the fiber itself is supposed to be 25 times stronger.
And see, hemp paper was universally used, throughout the early days of printing. I mean, up until...
Well, actually, the first American paper mill was started by Benjamin Franklin, and he used hemp as a source for the pulp. And the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were both drafted on hemp paper. So it's kind of interesting.
I mean, Ben Franklin, and yeah, he used to run a print shop, and I'm sure he went through reams and reams of early stage hemp paper. And then the hemp paper, they kind of started discontinuing the use of the hemp paper around the 1880s, if I understand that. And I'm not exactly sure why. I think it has to do with the political pressures of the timber industry.
Probably. not everybody can own a forest or exploit a national forest at the citizens' expense, but really wealthy.
That goes back to DuPont again, because the DuPont and the forest conglomeration or whatever, they were establishing their foothold around the turn of
anybody
the
can grow a
century.
hemp crop. It's relatively easy.
It grows everywhere, doesn't it? And it grows so readily that the earlier hemp crops from back during the 40s,
Yeah, they're
growing
still
wild now. And
still growing wild on Riverfront and Rock Island every year, right? Not 2 blocks from the jail and police department, well, the courthouse and the jail. You'll find hemp growing right on the railroad tracks along the river there, down by the Centennial Bridge. I've taken note of it since the late 80s, and it's been there every year. So
It's such a hardy plant. And I think prior to Prohibition, it was recommended to use hemp for soil stabilization, and preventing erosion. I think California had a program where they were going to seed slopes with hemp. And they should probably do that again. Now they had all this areas burned out with the fires recently.
it would work.
Growing the hemp would really help save their land from washing away.
Yeah, and think if all that money that was being spent in Los Angeles on cannabis wasn't being siphoned off to Mexico, what it could do for their local economy.
The recreational use of cannabis, yeah.
Because I know that they probably send billions every year to Mexico from Los Angeles alone for cannabis.
Back to the paper again here. Here's an example of cannabis paper, and it's a very high quality paper. I mean, really high density. It looks like it really print really nicely. And as a matter of fact, this is one of the flyers that was used for the most recent hemp festival. And see, who do we have on the picture there?
Well, we got Bill Clinton here, and he's smoking a joint. And underneath of him is a quote that says, "When I was in England, I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it. I didn't inhale and never tried it again." It was always my opinion that he probably should have said that, because see, the important thing here is that it's not illegal to smoke cannabis. It's illegal to possess it. But generally, to inhale cannabis, you have to possess it to hold it. He probably would have been better off if he would have said that someone had blown him a shotgun and he never touched it.
I think that would make sense.
Yeah, then he could have admitted that he got high. So.
Well, then of course, if he didn't actually inhale it, then I guess that's understandable. That
Well, of course he didn't like it. He didn't inhale it.
Yeah.
If he would have inhaled it, he probably would have liked it. So.
I was like, yeah, I drink regularly on the outside. I just spill the beer all over me, and I never get drunk. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Water in yourself beer.
Okay, let's see. How do we get a hold of the Quad City Hemp Coalition? They have a post office box, right?
P.O. Box 3592, Rock Island, Illinois, 61201. And it's just a post office box, and we get around to answering the mail periodically. So.
Great. And then there's lots of organizations out there that provide information on cannabis, in particular the movement to legalize the hemp. I noticed for a while there, Normal was passing out these flyers, and right at the very top it says "Free Marijuana."
This kind of catches your eye.
Yeah, and then it says "Free Marijuana from Tyranny and Injustice." So if you'd like information from Normal, we'll display their address and phone number at the end of the show, and we'll also show you the box number again for the Quad City Hemp Coalition, so that you can get right to us. And there's almost every state has hemp re-legalization organizations. I mean, several. I mean, the list just goes on.
Yeah, if you pick
on,
up a High Times magazine, usually they have a list of organizations in every issue that will.
It seems like it's just growing, the number of organizations.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we're getting the Minnesota Hemp Institute. Can you tell me much about the Minnesota Hemp Group?
I'm not exactly certain of everything they do. I know they've made some video productions, and I've seen that them produce all kinds of hemp products, bags made out of hemp cloth, and selling twine and hemp cloth and hemp seeds and hemp seed oil products, massage oils and stuff like that.
It's kind of my understanding of that Minnesota Hemp Institute is they're like a organization to promote the commercial development of the product of hemp.
Yeah.
Which is
And I believe that John Burenbach the founder of the institute actually believes that it would be if they legalized it for just industrial uses, it would be, you know, a blow for freedom. But at the same point, if they just legalized it for that purposes, it would probably make it harder to grow actual recreational quality hemp, because the hemp would basically make it impossible to develop a seed stock. The hemp plant that is grown basically for fiber production is so low in THC that it would basically give you a headache. And
It's like if you were to
yeah.
go pick the stuff that's
the
growing wild
ditchweed,
around
it's a
here,
waste
yeah.
of time. We've all tried it. It's a waste of time. We want the real stuff, you know.
Now, England, they've reestablished a legal hemp fiber crop. I understand that you heard this last summer, the summer of 1993, they've had some test areas.
Yeah, they
hemp.
supposedly just did a harvest over in England, and I believe Italy also ended the drug war officially over their drug war. I don't know what that all entails, but I'm sure they're gonna.
Like
It's a blow for freedom.
It's like Holland. They're since legalizing soft drugs.
Yeah, well, they're not necessarily legal. They're just not illegal, and they're officially overlooked. The police are more interested in catching violent criminals, people committing robberies, burglaries, etc., than
well, it would make sense.
victimless crimes. You know, if there's not a victim, how can there be a crime? Is their approach to law
Yeah, I mean, it makes
enforcement.
a lot of, you know, everybody can make the health issues of consuming recreational drugs as being bad for your body, but then
Well,
at the
almost,
same time, you know,
almost all the dangers associated with recreational use of hemp are due to the fact that it is illegal, the fact that you might buy cannabis that's adulterated with some toxic substance. If it was legal, you wouldn't have to be concerned with whether it was real hemp, you know. And as it is, even the country itself, they put paraquat in Mexico. They go to Mexico
our
and
own
spray
government
paraquat
is poisoning.
on cannabis that gets sold to people on the street. So they are actually the ones doing the poisoning.
our own government is poisoning the cannabis consumer, right, through spraying the paraquat in Mexico, and then they ship it back here, and people consume it, and they have, I don't know what the related health results are from consumption of paraquat, but
Can't
I know
be
it's not good, no. But I think probably the most dangers is with the concept of prohibition. Having it illegal and all the factors involved in the black market activity is more dangerous than the consumption of the drug itself. Now, when somebody gets arrested and he gets involved in the criminal system, he gets deeper and deeper into the hierarchy of criminal activity, so to speak. For this individual who was never arrested would never know about other felonious type people, you know.
Well, and people that are made criminals by the fact that it's illegal. I like to think of us as outlaws, not criminals. I make a distinction
There's definitely
myself.
a difference, yes.
Yeah, but as Daniel Roach, the head of the Metropolitan Enforcement Group, said that, well, the law makes you a criminal, so I guess I'm a criminal. Anyway, people that have been made criminal by the law are less likely to assist law enforcement when they are victims of crimes themselves, or when they witness a crime. They're less likely to want to talk to law enforcement, because in the black market there's you know, secrecy is paramount. If you talk to the police, everyone will distrust you. So right there, you're forced to use other channels to settle things that could be done in a civil manner.
It builds a disrespect for the whole law enforcement establishment. I mean, the cannabis consumers, they're not really quite sure how many people actually use cannabis, but the numbers are, I mean, there's 30, 40 million Americans possibly. And if that's really true, that many Americans are consuming the cannabis, that it makes it the largest minority group. It's larger than any skin color or
It's
ethnic.
a culture.
You know, it's larger than any ethnic group.
It's definitely a culture. They said 30 million, you know, and the federal government does, and I believe that's underestimated. But Yeah, it's definitely a subculture, and I think that we have rights as a culture. You know, the the U.S. was set up as a democratic republic, which meant that certain rights were protected by the Constitution, and they made it very difficult to change the Constitution so that individual rights would be protected. That was the idea, and basically the drug war has done a lot to destroy the Constitution. The First Amendment, your right to freedom of religion. What if your religion entails the use of cannabis? I mean, there are lots of religions that do. Totally valid religions with millions of people, you know.
See, the Second Amendment now no longer applies to people who use drugs. I mean,
If you
have a firearm,
if you get caught with a firearm, and you also have cannabis or something like that, it's automatic felony, I believe.
yeah, it's like there are double, triple penalties in case of cannabis.
So you're not allowed to defend yourself if you're a cannabis user, and that's one of the things is that you know, if you're a cannabis user, it makes you open to criminal activity, victimization. You know, people can victimize you because they know you won't go to the police. You know.
Okay, and then we have the Fourth Amendment against search and seizure, and most courts have pretty well upheld hearsay evidence as being good enough, or suspicion of the officer of being good enough to conduct a search for drugs. And they even have highway checkpoints now. I mean, one time I was driving in Minnesota not too long ago, and here all these big signs along the road says "Prepare to stop for drug checkpoint." You know.
I think it's really scary too, because when I was a child, we were taught that. I remember learning about World War II and Adolf Hitler and how they did all these terrible things to the people, you know, and you had to have papers. Now you got to have an ID, you know. You had to, you know, you have to be able to prove who you are to the police, or they can hold you 72 hours. That's what they did in Nazi Germany too. You have to. Drug checkpoints. They used to didn't go for that.
The drug checkpoints.
That's just been in the last 10 years.
Reducing your freedom of movement. And now in Iowa, if you get arrested with as little as one joint, you can lose your driver's license.
They can pull over your car anytime. You have to prove who you are, where you're going, what's up, you know. And that was stuff that we used to associate with fascist countries. They took a large part of their population, and because their beliefs were different, they removed them from society and basically eliminated them. And our country's pretty much verging on that type of activity. They arrest 500,000 people every year for marijuana charges.
One American every 2 minutes is arrested for marijuana.
They come and kick in your door in the middle of the night and drag
That's
you
what they
away.
do.
People dressed in they like to wear ninja suits.
The black hoods,
all
and you
black.
can't even
identify them. Yeah, and they come in waving guns, sitting. The police raided my house actually, and I wasn't home at the time. There was a pregnant woman there at the time, and they sat on her and held a gun to her head in one hand and a can of mace in the other. And I just
all this is just over people who like to smoke a flower, you know.
Well, in her case,
crazy,
it was
you know?
being in the wrong place at the wrong time. She wasn't involved, and they weren't looking for her. They were looking for me. But because she was home and they broke down my door when she was there, she became a victim of the drug war.
Yeah, it's just a lot of innocent people are being brought in to the drug war. I mean, there's cases of the Scott Ranch case in California where the man, with the forfeiture laws, giving the government the right to take your property away.
Yeah, they shot the man.
They shot the man. They never found any cannabis there.
Proof ever that he ever smoked it ever. You know, couldn't.
And that all boiled back to the Park Service wanting to take his land away, and he refused to sell it. So they conspired with the DEA. I guess it's Agent Stowell. And the sheriff's department, they said, well, okay, we'll go in there and we'll find some cannabis and we'll take this guy's land away, and the Park Service will be happy. But
well, they've created a circumstance where they can arrest that such a large portion of the people at the drop of a dime because they know that they're going to have cannabis. So a lot of people now believe that the drug war is a big reason why they had the riots in LA. The people are tired of being pulled over and harassed and told that they're not allowed to be driving a nice car because they're obviously a drug dealer if they have a nice car.
They're
and
doing
stuff.
that. I just saw on CNN here the other day that in Washington they have a profile for what they call the drug person, and just using this profile, they'll pull over
Oh,
and
yeah.
search the vehicle, and and that goes beyond probably the scope of what do they call that, probable cause. I mean, just
Definitely.
because you look like somebody, well, that gives us reasons to search you, and then once they search
Well,
you,
if we all look alike, that's just much more proof that we're a culture, an independent
definitely,
culture.
it's a
and
big minority
and as
that
a culture, we deserve rights.
that has to, it's like a civil rights issue.
Yes,
Martin
definitely.
Luther King fought for the civil rights of the blacks, and now the hemp movement, or like locally, the Quad Cities Hemp Coalition, is fighting for the civil rights of, so to speak, the cannabis user. And actually, and we went back to the numbers, it's the largest minority group there is. And if all the people would come out and
Well,
participate,
we take on members from all the other minority groups.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we cross all the racial barriers, basically.
I mean, it is a civil rights issue, because what group of citizens is denied? You say you're denied the First Amendment, you're denied some of the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment now no longer applies, and what's it the Eighth Amendment that deals with reasonable fines or excessive fines.
Mhm.
In the case of mandatory minimum sentencing, they're putting people in, in prison for 5 years for having a small quantity of cannabis, and they're letting the murderers and the rapists and the thieves run loose.
Yeah, why not? I mean, you get in less trouble if you break into somebody's house, steal all their property than you do if you're
Well, the government,
possessing cannabis.
the
Why
government
not?
can do that now. They can break into your house and steal all your property. And
Oh,
there's-
definitely.
There's a recent case here in the Quad Cities where an individual grew some cannabis, and the police didn't weigh the cannabis, and then they convinced the revenue department to seize everything this person owns.
Yeah, they like to say that every plant is equal to a kilogram, or is that how they is equal to 1,000 grams?
Well, they're basically
500 grams.
they're saying just a seed that's sprouted is going to potentially produce pounds and pounds and pounds of cannabis, which is totally untrue for an indoor growing type situation. But the forfeiture laws and the laws that they have in place today allow the police to come in and take all your property.
Oh, definitely. That's they didn't used to be able to do that. They don't take murderers' houses. They don't
They
take
don't
their
have a
property.
murder tax or whatever, where they say, well, you murdered somebody, so we're going to tax
That's
you
one of
your
the
life
silliest
savings,
things is the the tax stamp. You're supposed to go out and pay taxes and put it on your bag, the sticker, but they can still arrest you for the bag. I think that's the most preposterous thing. If you can pay taxes on it, you can do it.
Well, that should legitimize it,
Well, there was a girl in, I believe it was Kansas, that was charged, and she had individually weighed baggies of marijuana, all with the tax stamp on it, and they're charging her with all kinds of felonies, possession with intent to sell and deliver, and all that, and she had the tax stamp on it.
Right.
And she's fighting it, saying, "Hey, if I paid the tax, what's up?" And I don't know how she's doing, but
But
I'm
then
behind her.
another thing too, that this minority group, the cannabis users, they're not receiving due process. I mean, in a case, this recent tax case that I was talking about here, where they took all this man's property, and then they never weighed the cannabis. They never provided a hearing or proper documentation as to how the tax was to be assessed. They just, on the hearsay of a police officer, they says, well, we'll go take everything the guy's got. And it's just part of the insanity that's occurring. It just doesn't really make any sense. But I guess it's who has the gun? If you're at the wrong end of the gun, we can steal all your property. So.
Well, hey, the Declaration of Independence says that when the government keeps working for an objective that reduces it to despotism, that it is the individual's right and duty to overthrow such government, basically. That's what the Declaration of Independence says. So.
Yeah, I mean, you're supposed to be entitled to due process, but nowadays with the civil and criminal court cases are so backed up that the defendants are not receiving their hearings in a timely manner. Like the property forfeitures, it used to be under federal law, you had 10 days to respond to the government's seizing of your property or you automatically lose it. I mean, in 10 days, nothing happens in a court system in 10 days. It's just like real slow. So they take all your property away.
Well, if they
from
take
you.
all your property, you don't have a lawyer to go take
So
care
they
of that
take
stuff
they take
for
all
you
your money
because-
away, so that you can't hire a lawyer. So to speak, then you don't have any counsel, and so how can you defend yourself against?
Yeah,
the
I've tried to,
state?
and they always try to place obstacles in your way to defending yourself, like claiming that you have to have some form or whatever that you have no way of acquiring without a lawyer. So.
So the right of due process is like it doesn't apply either to the cannabis consumer. So as a minority group, we really have to work hard to fight for our civil rights because we've lost so many of them that just thinking about Martin Luther King trying to get the civil rights for the black people, and those people eventually got irritated to the point that they rioted. You know, in the early '60s they had riots, and I hope that doesn't ever happen with the with the cannabis movement. But the people are becoming more involved and understanding that the civil liberties are being eroded, and it is time for more people to come out of the closet and participate in, quote, the democratic process.
Well, what if we ask ourselves on that fateful day when Bill Clinton was trying marijuana but not inhaling? What if he had been arrested? Do you think he would have ever been our president? I mean, what effect would it have had on the course of history if he had been arrested for possessing cannabis?
You never know. It could. If we went back in time, it would really could change everything.
Definitely.
But back to the Quad City Hemp Coalition again. The organization is still here, and they are planning more events for the future. Hopefully, maybe they'll get a winter activity going this year, and then they'll have more springtime festivals again, of course. So you're looking forward to a large turnout again, of course.
Definitely.
Let's see. You can tell me more about the events that they have. Let's see. We have the live music, and we have the vendors selling T-shirts,
Entertainment, and lots of literature being handed out. We have speakers and a lot of civil disobedience. So
yeah, lots of civil disobedience. Yeah,
that's my favorite part of it.
Well, I'd like to thank you people for viewing Party Down TV and what is the Quad Cities Hemp Coalition. If you'd like more information, we'll show the address for the P.O. Box at the end of the show, and we'll also show you some addresses of other organizations that might be helpful in learning about cannabis hemp. And I'd like to thank you for being here with us today, and it's been a good conversation, and there's always more to learn about the issue of prohibition and why it has to end. And